Well, tonight, what started as a peaceful protest erupts into violent chaos at the U.S. Capitol. Well, several angry supporters of President Trump storming the historic building just as Congress was set to certify Joe Biden's win. Well, thank you so much for joining us live on TV, Android TV, or wherever you're streaming us right now. I'm Todd Quinones.
And I'm Trisha Keene. The building was declared secure by the Sergeant at Arms nearly 4 hours ago after the building was broken into. Shortly before some protesters got into the Capitol building, President Donald Trump spoke to his supporters at the Save America March.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about.
Well, protesters broke windows at the Capitol and got onto the chamber floor, forcing lawmakers to be rushed from the building while they were still counting the Electoral College votes, and several people were hurt, including one woman who was shot and killed, and police officers were also injured. President-elect Joe Biden called for the protesters to go home.
Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are.
Well, in a video on Twitter, which has later taken down, President Trump addressed protesters. Now, before telling them to go home, he falsely again claimed that he won the election. Now, tonight we have team coverage. And 13 Action News reporters Joe Bartels and Astrid Mendez, they are following rallies in the Valley. But we begin with Scripps reporter Joe St. George live from our nation's capital. And Joe, the question is, what happens next?
First off, perhaps some time for reflection of what we saw today, right? I mean, there has not been a breach of the United States Capitol building, these images that you show at the top of the broadcast, since the War of 1812. Not a breach like this since the War of 1812 for some historical perspective here. They're images that we're used to seeing halfway around the world. And on this night, it was in our country, our backyard to some degree, in our nation's capital. What happens next? Well, the finger pointing for how this could have happened will no doubt be addressed. How could security allow this to happen? Perhaps there will be structural changes put in place in our nation's capital. There are questions about the inauguration of Joseph R. Biden, who's supposed to be inaugurated on the west steps of the Capitol on January 20th. What security changes might change for that? In terms of tonight, the members of Congress are poised to send a powerful message, and that is even after what could only be described as an insurrection on the Capitol steps and inside the Capitol today, both chambers are committed to gaveling back in tonight when it's appropriate, when it's safe, and getting the Electoral College certified, to some degree sending a message to the world that democracy is still alive in the United States. But a powerful image in the midst of a debate regarding the Electoral College. We had these scenes tonight. And you know, it's cliche, every 4 years we traditionally say the peaceful transition of power happens in this country. Today, nothing was peaceful. It was pretty ugly.
And Joe, it's Trisha Keene. I have a quick question about the Republicans who were in support earlier in the day of President Trump prior to the Capitol building being stormed. Do we know where they stand tonight in terms of this?
We're getting some guidance, right? And what's becoming abundantly clear in checking with some of my colleagues on Capitol Hill is that the speeches that members of Congress wrote this morning or last night or last week to deliver today are being completely ripped up. They cannot deliver the speech that they had planned, and they cannot object to the number of states that they planned on objecting to. So there is a growing consensus that the Electoral College certification vote will move relatively quickly because both parties know they have to send a message that democracy is alive and well. Time will tell, of course, but that is the growing consensus. Honestly, here in the nation's capital, it's hard to look outside your window and see those images and not be moved to change something following today.
And Joe, a quick question here. Todd Quinones, what we saw today was a total and complete failure when it comes to security. Are there any indications you're hearing from your sources that Congress is going to be demanding answers at some point from the people who run the Capitol Police about exactly why they were not prepared today?
You know, like you said, I think there'll be in a time and a place for that, because this is a town that's used to protesting. But perhaps the Capitol Police may have underestimated the power of their barricades or their barriers, right? Those 4-foot barriers that we see often at presidential events. If there's one thing that we've seen this summer, and I was near the White House for the Black Lives Matter protest reporting, protesters in this era, whatever you want to call it, this era, don't seem to be fazed by a barricade or a barrier. They're almost willing to taunt security. They're not afraid of security. Look, the reality is that what we saw today isn't going to end after today. And it's not going to end when President-elect Joe Biden takes the Oval Office. This country is divided and remains divided.
All right, Joe St. George, thank you so much reporting from the nation's capital tonight. We appreciate your time.